How do we equip our families with a biblical worldview? How do we prepare the next generation for life? How do I grow in my walk with the Lord and in my marriage? If you wrestle with these questions, you are in the right place to find answers. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. Welcome to the Entrusting the Faith podcast. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford, and today I have the opportunity to interview Marty Machowski. Marty is a family pastor. He is an author of several books for children's discipleship, things like Long Story Short, Old Story New, the Gospel Story Bible, Theology, just some great resources for family. But before we start our interview, this episode is brought to you by my book, Leading Well at Home, How Husbands and Fathers Can Biblically Lead Their Families. So have you ever thought, I want to be a godly husband or father, but I don't know where to start? Have you ever heard that you need to do something to equip your family, but didn't know how to begin? Well, if so, Leading Well at Home will show you how you can love Jesus Christ, love and serve your wife and children, and take responsibility for discipling your family. You'll be encouraged and given action steps that you can apply so that you're moving forward. You can buy it online through our website at entrustingthefaith.com or leadingwellathome.com or anywhere books are sold online. You can also get a free excerpt on our website. All that information is in the show notes, so you can check it out. Now, let's jump into today's interview. Marty, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be with you today.
Oh, thank you for joining us. So how did you begin writing? So you have written several books. What was there a need that you saw and you're like, hey, I need to write something to sort of meet this need? Were you always a writer and it just sort of, the opportunity came up? What was that like?
Well, it all started as a pastor who oversaw our children's ministry. The teachers came to me and said, hey, the curriculum we're using doesn't provide enough material and is not interesting enough. And we'd like to know if you could put together some lesson supplements for me. So I said, that's a good idea. And I can also do some devotionals for our dads to use, our parents to use. And so I put together like 8 weeks. And I said, here's what we're going to do. I'll get together 2 teams who will write with me. I'll write 1/3 and they'll take their turns, 8 lessons each until we get through the year. We'll see how that goes. When I got done my 8, we got together and I said, so, what do you think? They said, oh, these lessons are fantastic, but we can't do it. We can't do what you do. So you need to do it. And, oh, by the way, we started 3 weeks ago, and so you're about a month and a week ahead, and we need you to keep writing. And so I was being driven like the crack of the whip. I was the horse, and they were forcing me to pull this wagon. And so over the course of the next 5 years, I wrote the curriculum and the devotional that goes with it. The curriculum became the Gospel Story curriculum, and the devotional, the Old Testament, Long Story Short, the New Testament, Old Story New for parents that goes along with the curriculum. That was picked up by New Growth Press, and my role as an author kind of took off accidentally because I was just trying to serve the families of our church.
So now within that, what age groups were you writing for? Was it like K through 5? What was it like?
I wrote 3 levels for each lesson. So a preschool, an early elementary, and an upper elementary. And I did a 3-year curriculum. So 156 lessons altogether.
Wow.
There are more words in the curriculum and devotionals than in the King James Bible.
Wow.
It was a 10-year project altogether.
Wow. Just started by seeing a need, saying, okay, I don't see anything that really fits what we want. So I'm just going to start out along with other people and we'll just do something. And it turned into this.
I wasn't trying to be famous. I was just trying to be faithful.
Oh, that is
And God blessed
beautiful.
it.
He did. He did. It's one of the Bibles that story Bibles that I've used with my family is the Gospel Story Bible. We went through that one several times, and for those listening, I can't recommend it enough for family devotions at home with your kids. The other materials are excellent as well. From a pastor standpoint, from a husband father standpoint, what do you see as the importance of equipping our children with a biblical worldview?
Well, we live in a culture that is attacking more than ever the biblical worldview that God created the earth, that he created men and women in his own image, male and female, he created them. The scriptures say the culture is saying something very different from that now. And the culture is more accepting than ever of sinful patterns of behavior. You see that we now have push button pornography in devices. And so giving our children from a very young age a biblical foundation is what they need to survive this world and to thrive in this world, knowing that with the Spirit of God in their heart, with the word to guide them, they can discern right from wrong, good from evil. But without that, what we see are a lot of young people confused and shipwrecked to know what to do about their confusion.
That is true. Survive and thrive. It's not simply because the culture can't guide us. We need scripture to guide us. And that's the only way we will survive. It's the only way we can grow in faith. So that makes perfect sense.
I think that a lot of parents look at that task and see it as very daunting. I agree with you, Marty. I know I need to be doing that, but life is so busy. And what I tell them is, there are resources out there that do all the heavy lifting for you. You mentioned the Gospel Story Bible, the devotionals I mentioned, Long Story Short and Old Story New. If you get them, they literally have step by step what you say, and it only takes 10 minutes a day. Stick it by your seat where you eat dinner so that it's like they're commanding your attention through the meal. And then take your family through it. I say the best time to do devotions is after dinner, before dessert. Have that promise of ice cream as the cherry on top of the devotions. And whatever you do, don't do the big mistake that I made, which is try to do devotions before dinner. Nobody's paying attention. Everybody's hungry. Wait, do the devotions, and then go to dessert.
It's all about the timing, right? It
is all about the time.
That's true. And it's time of day is like finding that right time and then just trying to be consistent with it.
Yeah, we have to consistently eat. And families, though they may not all eat together, when their kids are young, they can't leave their kids to eat alone. And so what I find is families with younger children in that preschool, grade school age are usually eating meals 3-4 times a day together. That is when you're already gathered. You don't have to figure out how to fit it in your schedule, and you can simply do it. And I would just say, hey, if you have parents that are both busy, maybe some days dad does the devotions, maybe some days mom does, but together, tag teaming, they can, using a resource, lead their families into the truth and a relationship with Christ.
That's powerful. Do you find families sort of fearful of that? Do you find it's either too busy or fearful in order to get started with that? I didn't know what you have seen or experienced kind of in your work.
Well, what confronts us is that big fat study Bible that's sitting on the coffee table laughing at us. Ha! Go ahead and try to figure out what I'm about and teach this to your kids. You don't even know where to begin, you fool. And it's just laughing at us. And so what I say is, this is what you do. pick up a devotional that leads your family in a way that you don't have to worry about where to go, what to do. And then I think the second thing, beyond not knowing how to get started, is the condemnation which comes to parents when they start and then they stop and they fail. They fall off the wagon, so to speak. They fall off the devotional wagon, and when they feel like they're a failure, and the enemy's there to send those fiery dart accusations their way. But the scriptures say that the righteous man, though he falls 7 times, he gets up again. And so what we realize is that falling isn't failure. Falling is only a step in learning, and we get back up again. The only way to truly fail is after you fall to not get back up again. So I would just encourage those listening, if they've fallen off the devotional wagon and they're not doing family devotions and they're feeling condemned, then stand against the enemy, step up, get started again, be that righteous man, that righteous woman who, though you fall, you get up again. And what are they called? They're called righteous. The one who falls and gets up again is called righteous. So falling isn't failure. Only if you refuse to try again do you truly fail.
I know I need that. I need that reminder that it's not about perfection. It's simply taking the next right step. I have seen that just in my own family's devotional walk, where we would do really well consistently for an extended period. Life gets crazy. We get out of sorts. And we've been going through that the last couple of months. And now I'm trying to get back into that routine. So for me, and I know for my listeners, that we need that encouragement, that reminder that it is just getting back up, try again. There is grace, keep moving forward.
Yeah. And the enemy is ever there to make fun of us. Like speak lies in our ear, like, look, your kids aren't paying attention. They don't care about this. What you're sharing is like so boring, is so, unexciting. Look at them. You think what you're sharing is going to change them? Huh? And you suddenly realize, wait a minute. Okay. Paul says this, that he who sows and he who waters is nothing. So yeah, say back to the enemy who's lying in your ear, of course not. I'm nothing. Do you think that it's me, the one that is meant to make a difference? No. I am sharing the words of life. And it is God who promises that he will cause the seed to sprout and grow. He gives the increase. I'm hopeful not on my presentation, but on his power. I'm not relying on my fantastic ability to wow my kids. I'm relying on the promise that if we are faithful, God will do the work that we can't. And so, parents out there, it is not about how you present, it's about what you present. If you're sharing the gospel and the story of Christ with your children, the Spirit of God is going to use that. How many people, even later in life, gave their lives to Christ and then only hearkened back to remember what that Sunday school teacher told them, what the VBS program verses that they memorized meant to them, what their parents did in their example of praying themselves, going to church, sharing Bible verses, reading from the scriptures. All those things can come back in that moment when God says, time to cause that seed to grow. And so we just keep being faithful. As we fall, we get back up again, and we trust that God is going to do what he says he will do, which is cause that seed to grow.
That's a good reminder of our role and God's role, and just ours is to water, to plant the seeds. It's all God's work. We're just along for the ride, so to speak. But if we're like pointing them to Christ, influencing them, making much of him, but God has to do the work. And that sort of takes the pressure off of us too.
Yeah, and we do feel pressure, particularly when our kids are struggling.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too. I find there's another, I think, deficiency that's easily corrected, and that is the amount of time we as parents pray. And
Mm.
and so, I'll have somebody come, I don't know what to do with my son. I just don't know what to do with my daughter. I try to, I've asked them to go to church. I did, and I said, well, let me ask you this. Have you been praying regularly? Ah, of course. Yeah. Thank you. I need that. But what can I do? And I said, no, we just talked about it. I was reading through a book by Paul Miller called A Praying Life. And in the book, he recommends that you write out on index cards prayers for your family members, for your friends, those things that you're asking God for. And so I wrote down on one of my cards that the Lord would bring my two oldest daughters back together. They had been moving apart. They're close in age, about 18 months. And even though they were homeschooled in our home, the same exact material, because our younger daughter was really smart, we kept them in their peer groups. But what that meant was Emma, as a senior, was now engaging with college students, and Martha, as a 10th grader, was engaging with high school students, and they were soon to actually both go to college. And so my prayer card said, Lord, would you encourage Emma to welcome Martha into her circle of friends, because I see them drifting apart. So I'm praying this prayer in the morning. I finish my prayer time, which is down in the basement. I go upstairs, and I have to walk by the girls' room to get to my room where I'm going to get ready for work. And so their door was cracked open. I could hear their conversation. And as I'm going by, Martha said, or Emma said to Martha, I really feel like we've been drifting apart lately. And I think the Lord wants me to invite you into my circle of friends so that our relationship can be strengthened. I'm like, that's my prayer card. She just declared what I've been praying. And
Wow.
And I was like, wow, God is powerful. And he is a God who wants to answer our prayers as parents. And so if you've got a difficulty, whether that's my toddler won't stay in bed, my toddler refuses to eat, my grade school student won't, do his homework, my high school student keeps sneaking phones from his friends to be able to text people he's not supposed to, whatever the issue, ask the question, have I offered this up to the Lord in prayer? And what I've experienced is that not everything we lift up in prayer all changes as we desire, but so much of our challenges are affected by prayer that it's just something that we can't afford to not have as the first tool, not the last resort.
I need that reminder. And I've seen that too in my own family with my kids, and even not necessarily spiritual matters, so to speak, but whether it's with school, whether it's with friendships, when I do pray consistently, going before the Lord, he does work, and it is powerful to see. And like you say, it's very humbling. It's like, oh my word, that's what I've been praying. And now they're saying the very things that I had requested. And it's like, maybe I ought to do this more often. It's one of those moments for me. It's like, oh yeah, I need to.
Exactly.
It really is that straightforward and direct.
Absolutely. It is something that we can't be without as parents, but something that we often neglect because we can get caught up with what can we do instead of what can we ask God to do.
Do you think that's more of a pride thing on our part? It's like, oh, I am responsible for, all of this, or I just need to do it. Is it an attitude thing of, oh, I don't want to, I don't think to? Is there sort of a root issue there?
Well, I think that it's a measure of our faith and what we really believe. It's easy to believe in the things that we can do right now. Like we're in control and we do them. it's harder to see that we would offer up these words into the universe. They would be picked up by the ear of our God, translated into his will for our lives to affect change that we actually don't move to do. And, but scripture tells us that we don't need to speak out many words, that our God knows even what we need before we ask. So, but it's, do you really trust that God can make a difference? And so what will happen is when our children disobey, we can levy these judgments against them, harsher punishments than we would otherwise need, because we're fearful that if we don't put our foot down, we're going to lose them. And so we say, okay, we're fearful, so we react. Well, what is fear? Fear is the opposite of faith. If when we look back at our lives, at the things that we've feared with regard to our kids, a lot of them have been resolved. Like, I had some pretty silly fears as a parent growing up. Like, I feared when my kid was the only kid that wasn't teething, maybe he has that rare disease where he won't get any teeth. when potty training wasn't working out, maybe he won't ever be able to be potty trained. I mean, but we don't see, our kids in high school wearing diapers. They all smile and have teeth, generally speaking, but the little silly fears can come in. But more importantly, when one of my children was arrested and I got a call from the police, you need to come and pick up your child at the station. Oh, you want to talk about fears coming in. But as I look back now and I see how God used the trials in that child's life to lead them to the end of themselves, where they trusted Christ and now are living for him. Oh, it's so easy to be filled with faith for what God did. But what God wants me to do is translate what I see that he has done into my trust for what he yet will do. And so, parents, look back. What has the Lord led you through to this point? He's the same faithful God today than he was yesterday. Allow his care and his kindness and his grace and the resolution to challenges that you've experienced in years past to give you faith for going to the Lord in prayer for what he will do today and tomorrow.
That is powerful. That is true. That is truth. I need to remember. I know our audience needs to remember that as well, because God's faithfulness hasn't changed. He is just as faithful today as he was yesterday, as he will be tomorrow, as his word tells us. And so we just need to hold fast to that. What do you see, as you look around for parents? What do you see as the biggest challenge for us today in discipling our children, in pointing them to Christ, in having those conversations?
Well, I think that they live in a culture that ever more is lying to them. And so even our youngest children, your gender is your decision. When your gender, the Bible tells us, is a gift from God that'll never change. Society says, you know what? You might be a boy on the outside, but you might not be a boy on the inside. You might be a girl on the inside. And it's what is on the inside that counts. So figure out who you are on the inside. But God, when it says he made them male and female, what God did was he coded into every male cell male chromosomes. He coded into every female cell female chromosomes. And so the truth is that you're not only a boy on the outside, but you're a boy inside every cell of your body, so that if an investigator found a hair at a crime scene and looked at that hair microscopically, he could determine whether that hair came from a boy or a girl. It was either a man's hair or a woman's hair. And so that was the reason, for example, I wrote the book, God Made Boys and Girls, so that parents would have a resource to use to fight and war against the lies of the culture. Our culture is not just today suggesting evolution, but commanding that it be accepted no longer as a theory, but as a certainty. And yet we know that God created the heavens and the earth. So our children are being exposed to things that aren't true, particularly if they're in the public school system. We need, as parents, to give them the truth before they receive the lies, so that they can distinguish the two. You know, the traditional illustration is when the FBI did counterfeit training, they didn't show counterfeit bills to the investigators to teach them how to spot a counterfeit. They made them study the real bills so that they would easily be able to spot the fakes, because the fakes distorted the true reality of the genuine. And so that's what we do as parents. We disciple our children in the genuine, so that when the distorted unreality comes their way, they can discern against it. So teaching our youngest children, for example, that your gender is a gift from God that can never change, that's coded into every cell of your body. If you're a boy, you're an XY boy. And if you're a girl, you're an XX girl in your chromosomes, can equip the children to know what to say to their teacher when their teacher says, no, you can be whatever you are. What you are on the inside is not what you are on the outside. And they raise their hand. They say, is that true of our chromosomes? I thought that as a girl, I had XX in every one of my cells. Is that true? Well, what does the teacher say? No, that's not true. Well, no, that's true. I guess that's true. So we want to equip our kids to be able to handle the lies that are pervasive in our culture.
Starting at an early age, so that they know, so that you have not only telling them and showing them what is true, but also giving them that sort of giving you that credibility also for, hey, I'm sort of that first in kind of approach where it's like, okay, this is what God says. We are having this conversation, so that then they have a sort of that grid, that framework for all the other questions that come in.
That's exactly right. We prepare them for the eventualities in our culture that we know are going to come. And that is the way that we disciple our kids. When's the best time to teach your children what poison ivy looks like? Is it, in preparing them to recognize it, or after they kick a ball in their bare feet around in a field of poison ivy? Oh, you guys, look, didn't you know that was poison ivy? Well, Mom, no, I didn't know. You never taught me. Dad, you should have told me that ahead of time. I didn't know we had poison ivy all through our backyard. Yeah, we always say, stay in the lawn, don't go back there. And we're like, yeah, but you never told us why. So we need to equip our children with the why, not just say, don't talk to this person. You need to only believe what you hear at home. I mean, it's like, well, we need to equip them to interact with their world, so that they are able to not just parrot what we say, but make it their own.
And give them that logical, reason-based answers, so that they can have those conversations and that they can think through, okay, this makes sense as to why this is true.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That makes sense. For families listening to this, is there any takeaway you would like them to have? We've covered a gamut of things. Any one last takeaway you would like to leave them with, a piece of encouragement, an action item, challenge, anything like that?
Yeah, I would say the psalmist says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. You look at the psalm, you say, is that the Lord building the house, or are we supposed to build the house? The answer is yes. Don't try to build your house alone. Recognize that as you build, you want to engage God, and it says that he's going to build the house with you, and that children are a blessing and a reward. He'll be the second set of eyes on the wall of your city, so that you don't have to go to bed with anxious toil, worried about your kids. You can be the one who's given sleep and rest. Because why? You know that while you're laboring, you've engaged God to labor with you. While you're watching, you've engaged God to watch with you. So I would want to leave your listening audience with this encouragement. If you engage God, you are not parenting alone, and he will help you.
That is amazing comfort, amazing truth. Something I know I need, my audience needs to remember. This is not our fight on our own. We have the God who made heaven and earth walking with us, working through us, looking out for us. So I appreciate those words of encouragement. For our listeners, just as we wrap up, if they want to know more about you, more about your materials, about your books, where would you like them to go?
Well, they can go to newgrowthpress.com. That's the publisher. They can go to my website, martymachowski.com, and all my books are also there. Or they can Google any of the titles or search for any of the titles or my name on Amazon and find them there.
Excellent. Well, I'll make sure that the links and everything are in the show notes. So if you're listening, you can go to the show notes to get to each of these websites, check out the materials. They are very solid, very engaging. I can't recommend them enough. And so definitely check them out. So Marty, thank you for joining me. This has been a blessing to me. I know it has been to our audience, and we really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Eric. Glad to be with you today.
Wow. Great conversation with Marty. 3 things that jumped out at me. First, in doing this family discipleship thing, if it feels daunting or if you feel sort of overwhelmed, there are a lot of resources out there that you can find. In the show notes, check out, I'll list several of Marty's. They are all wonderful. We've used the Gospel Story Bible a lot when our kids were younger. All the others are good too. So a lot of resources available. Second, the amount of time as parents that we pray, it has a significant impact on our children, and yet we often look everywhere else for a solution. I know I'm guilty of this. And yet God is a God who wants to answer our prayers. So we need to ask, have I lifted this up to the Lord in prayer? And then just lastly, part of what we need to do as parents is prepare our children ahead of time for the questions and problems they're going to face later in life, right? Because we need to give this truth, this biblical truth to our children before they encounter the lies from the culture, so that our children may be able to discern what is true, that they can make it their own and not just simply parrot what we say. And that, as parents, if we're engaging God, we're not parenting alone because the Lord's going to help us. So check out his website, martymachowski.com. You can find his books everywhere. All this is in the show notes. So wonderful conversation. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review for us wherever you listen to podcasts. Doing so will help others to find us. Check out the show notes for resource information. We encourage you to do that for links and other references. We'd like to hear from you, so you can message us your questions or comments on Facebook, Instagram, at Entrusting the Faith. You can email us at info@entrustingthefaith.com. If you go to our website, which is www.entrustingthefaith.com, you can sign up to our email list and receive free resources as well as upcoming podcast episode information. So check it out. Lastly, just remember, legacies are built a day at a time. So start now.